In security risk management, stakeholder engagement is crucial for successful strategic planning. This is because it entails engaging people who have a stake in the outcome of the security plans that we are executing. In this video, we are going to be engaging on how best we can communicate and collaborate with our existing stakeholders. What strategies can we get to deploy and get to build and improve those relationships, and in turn, get to improve on decision making, build trust, and get to mitigate risks. Welcome to Security Nuggets Podcast, a channel that unpacks security risk insights and perspectives. I'm your host, Ashley, and it's a pleasure to have you joining us in this discussion. And without wasting any time, let's delve right into it. We're going to engage on 10 critical strategies for stakeholder engagement, because ideally, stakeholder engagement is a process that organizations follow to communicate and collaborate with the existing stakeholders. So we are going to look at 10 strategies that we can get to leverage so that we can improve on that process of stakeholder engagement, and we can get to improve on our communications and collaborations with our existing stakeholders. Now, strategy number 1, identify your stakeholders. This entails mapping out the different types of stakeholders that your organization may have, as well as establishing how they are connected to your security strategic goals. Now, for you to deliberate on this strategy, you've got to understand who's a stakeholder. A stakeholder is an individual, a group, or organization that can be affected or can be influenced or has an interest towards your security activities, decisions, or performance, okay? So there is that element of association, okay? And you may have stakeholders who are internal and others who are external. Internal stakeholders are stakeholders who are within your organization. For example, your employees, those are internal stakeholders. The business line managers or the function heads, those are your internal stakeholders, okay? Those are just examples. Now, examples of external stakeholders can include your vendors, your suppliers, your business partners, law enforcement agencies, those are also your external stakeholders, as well as regulatory authorities, okay, etc., etc. So map them out, establish what role they play via association when it comes to your security strategic goals, your security activities, your security performance, your security decisions, okay? And then map them out. Map out the internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders. Now, when you do that, you can now go to the second strategy, right? Which is, the second strategy is prioritize your stakeholders. This is an in-depth process of analyzing and establishing which stakeholders are of more importance towards your organization, which stakeholders have a high impact towards your operational continuity, or who are bound to be affected by your organization's operations. What are their levels of interest and influence? Now, for instance, let's take a stakeholder like a regulatory body or a regulatory authority who is an external stakeholder, okay? Now, this sort of stakeholder has a high interest in your organization because they definitely want to ensure that your organization is in compliance with the regulations that are in place. This, of course, depending on your area of operation and your region or state of operation. So their interest is to ensure that you are complying with the set security regulations and standards, all right? So they have a high interest, okay? And they also have a high influence towards your operational continuity, because if you are not complying with their standards and regulations, then they can influence your operational continuity by putting an end towards your operations or penalizing you, opposing you until you comply, until you demonstrate that you are complying, okay? So this is an external stakeholder who has a high interest and has a high influence. So they need your attention as a security function. They need your attention in terms of effectively communicating and collaborating with them, okay? So in the second strategy of prioritizing stakeholders, this is where you analyze all that and you identify all these. Obviously, you're doing this for all your stakeholders. You've got to categorize their importance. You've got to analyze and categorize their importance, which means that you're basically assessing their interest against their influence so that you can see who needs more attention, who doesn't need more attention. And a stakeholder who requires more attention requires more communication, you know, and requires more reporting, requires more feedback, coming in and all that. Okay. So that is what prioritizing stakeholders helps you with. Okay. Now, once you have prioritized your stakeholders, you can move into the next strategy. The third strategy is that you get to understand your stakeholders' needs and expectations. Each stakeholder is unique and different in their own way. They have different needs and different expectations. So take your time to learn them. Take your time to understand their unique needs and expectations. That way, you can be able to tailor your engagement efforts accordingly, and you can get to choose what mode of engagement you're going to be using to get to understand them better. Obviously, understanding your stakeholders better will require some form of feedback mechanism. They need to relay their feedback to you. They need to communicate to you and give them their and give you their feedback. All right, and you can use tools like surveys, especially if you're dealing with a bigger bracket or a bigger number of stakeholders. Surveys are ideal for that. And you can also use interviews, all right? If the stakeholder number is manageable, you can leverage on interviews. These can give you a good opportunity for them to share in-depth feedback, and you can get to understand them better as an organization and as the security function, okay? And you can also use online forums. This is very ideal because it can be in form of, say, online questionnaires, whereby you're sending an online questionnaire to your different stakeholders on email, and you're requesting them to fill in or choose different choices so that they can get to either rate your performance as a security department, or they can get to share areas where they feel you need to improve on and all that. Okay, so it's very important because if you can get to understand your stakeholders' needs and expectations, then you can be able to know how to communicate and collaborate with them. Okay, and you can get to tailor different communication methods and channels for different stakeholders because you already know them better. You already know their needs and expectation a little bit better. Okay. And in this process where you're getting to understand your stakeholders, it's good to be proactive. Take initiative instead of waiting for the stakeholders to reach out to you when there is an issue or when there is a concern. You can instead reach out to them. You can be proactive, you can take initiative, okay? Again, you need to be transparent, okay? Be honest and open with the information that you're sharing with them in as far as your organization operations and activities are concerned. For instance, if you're dealing with an external stakeholder in form of a vendor or a supplier, assuming this is a supplier who is providing you with security services or security products, they will not be able to be of value to you. They will not be able to give you the best service if you're holding back important information, vital information. So give them the correct information, be honest and open in regards to your organization's activities and operations so that they can be able to tailor the service they're delivering to your organization to suit your organization, okay? Again, be responsive, all right? If they communicate to you and they've given you some form of feedback that requires you to respond back, come back with a response. Kindly do so, okay? Otherwise, it beats the purpose. It beats the purpose of you collecting feedback from your stakeholders and you're not responding back to them with feedback or you're not communicating back to them, okay? Even if there's nothing to relay back, just thank them and appreciate them for sharing the feedback they've provided you with, okay? And if they have provided concerns or they have provided suggestions of how best they think that you can improve on communication and collaboration with them, then go ahead and look into it and just be intentional and give them your feedback, okay? And the other thing you can do is you need to be respectful when you're communicating with your stakeholders, all right? We have this problem as organizations. We pay the attention we give stakeholders with high stakes is not the attention we give stakeholders with low stakes. All right. Every stakeholder, in spite of their level of influence or impact, is an important stakeholder, should be treated with respect. All right. So be respectful in your communication. Be respectful in the process of getting to understand your stakeholders. Okay. For instance, employees, they are our internal stakeholders. All right. By association, because the security plans we are executing, one way or another, touches on them because we are deploying and executing these security plans to ideally protect the organization assets. Those employees are organizational assets. Some of those employees work closely with some of the other organizational assets, okay? Some of those employees rely on some organizational assets to input on their daily activities and operations. So they are important stakeholders. So let's be respectful when we are communicating with them so that they can feel comfortable when they are relaying their perspectives and their opinions so that we can improve those communications and collaboration. The fourth strategy is set clear goals and objectives. Now, remember, at the beginning of this discussion, we mentioned that stakeholder engagement is a process. It is a process that organizations deliberate on how they are going to communicate and collaborate with their stakeholders. And therefore, it should be done with intention. That means that we should set goals and objectives on our stakeholder engagement effort. How do we want to go about it? And what are we hoping to achieve from it? When do we want to deliberate on it? How do we want to do it? What needs to be executed in the process? How do we need to communicate with stakeholders? When do we need to communicate with stakeholders? So these are the goals that you need to set in this fourth strategy. All right. And when you're doing that, when you're setting your stakeholder engagement goals and objectives, they should be SMART, which means that they should be specific, they should be measurable, they should be achievable, they should be relevant and time-bound. And again, we should aspire to involve the stakeholders in the process of setting these goals and objectives. That way, we can ensure that the goals and objectives we are setting are relevant and achievable. That means that we are being realistic in the process. The fifth strategy is to develop an effective communication mechanism. A well-defined communication plan is crucial for effective stakeholder engagement, and it should outline the goals for the communication plan, the target audience, the mode of communication channels, and the timelines of implementation. And some of the factors that would influence your communication mechanism development plan can include your stakeholders' preferred channel of communication. How do your stakeholders prefer being engaged? What mode of communication do they prefer? As well as your stakeholders' time constraint. Do they have time to read or listen to your messages? If they do, well and good, then it broadens your options. If they don't, it limits your options, and it requires you to be very strategic in the type of communication channel that you use with them, because they're time constrained. All right. Again, where are your stakeholders located? Are they near you, or are they away from you? Are they far? Also consider the local context of your stakeholders. For instance, if the stakeholder you engage in is a community, you've got to consider the local context of the local area where that community is located. So you've got to be cognizant of all these factors. The sixth strategy is foster inclusivity and diversity. Now, when stakeholders feel included and respected, they're highly likely to participate meaningfully and share their perspective. Now, when you have a diverse range of perspectives from different people, okay, you are bound to make better decisions, because different people means different backgrounds, different knowledge on the subject matter, and when they share all these different perspectives, you get a chance to see things from a different angle. Again, a diverse workforce is more likely to be innovative, because different people from different backgrounds bring different ideas to the table. The advantage of fostering inclusivity and diversity as an organization, and in this case, the security department or function, is that organizations that are seen to be inclusive are seen to be more credible and trustworthy. All right. And what this does is that it builds up on your positive reputation as an organization. The seventh strategy is deploying transparency and accountability. This means that you have to be responsible for your actions as the security function. You have to be responsible for your actions, okay? And this means you also being honest and transparent about your decision making, and also being open to make changes and adjustments where necessary. One of the ways that you can demonstrate transparency is by using reports. This could be monthly reports or annual reports to your stakeholders, all right, whereby you're demonstrating your function's performance, all right? And when it comes to sharing reports with your stakeholders, all right, one, we need to have those reports being sent timely, all right? So they need to be sent in time. And also, we need to have that consistency going. I mean, let's not send a report this month and skip the next month and send the other month, okay? If the idea is to send reports monthly to stakeholders by a certain date of the month, let's stick to that timeline. If the idea is to send reports every once a year, which means they are annual, let's stick to that timeline as well. Therefore, we are being consistent, okay? And we are making sure that those reports are being sent timely within the target timelines, okay? Again, let's make sure that the reports we are sharing to stakeholders are reports that are accurate. That means that we are basing the information within those reports, we are basing that information on credible information and accurate data that is also up to date. Again, let's demonstrate transparency in those reports. Okay? The mistake we make as security departments is we sugarcoat too much in our security reports. We are just being glamorous and glittery in those reports. But the thing is, we are supposed to be transparent, okay? Even when things are not looking that glamorous on our end in reference to our performance, let's demonstrate that because it shows that we are being honest about what we are doing. And again, we have set goals for ourselves and we can tell when we are not meeting those goals and we can demonstrate that and we can recommend ways of how we can meet those goals, or we can request for support and assistance so that we can get that support we need to be able to achieve those goals. Okay. So again, in your reports with your stakeholders, be transparent. All right. Also, be open to getting feedback. Okay. You've shared this report with your stakeholders. You also have to be willing to receive feedback. And sometimes that feedback cannot be that positive as we hope for, as we hope. Sometimes the feedback we get can be negative. Okay, but we should take it positively as constructive criticism and make changes and adjustments where necessary. Okay, and also be able to go back to the people giving us the feedback and having a sitting with them and asking them, where do you think we need to make adjustments and how do you feel we need to make that adjustments? All right. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what stakeholder engagement is all about. That is how we grow communications and collaborations, by building trust, by being open and transparent and being accountable. All right. The eighth strategy, and this is a very crucial strategy. All right. Because in my opinion, it is the backbone or the core of stakeholder engagement process. This is why we are doing it, okay? This is one of the most important reasons why we are building those stakeholder engagement efforts. That is the reason why we are insisting on increasing those communications and collaborations with stakeholders from a security point of view because of this strategy. All right. Strategy number 8, incorporate stakeholders in your risk response mechanisms. All right. And this entails requesting your stakeholders' input on potential threats and vulnerabilities, and also including them in the process of developing mitigation strategies. Let them have a say. Let them have a say in the development of ideal mitigation strategies, because remember, these stakeholders, they have a stake in the security plans that you're making one way or another, okay? So their input is to your best interest as a security department, okay? They can be able to suggest mitigation action plans that are that are realistic, that are appropriate, because at the end of the day, they might be the ones who are directly involved in the execution of these mitigation action plans. All right. So hear them out and include them in the process of development of mitigation action. So this is a very important strategy whereby we are incorporating stakeholders in the process of risk response mechanism. The next strategy is celebrate those milestones. This means that when our stakeholders get to exceed their performance threshold, let us appreciate them and celebrate them. All right. This is very important, okay? Because what this does is that it demonstrates our appreciation and the fact that we value what the stakeholders are doing from a security risk engagement point of view. So we need to appreciate them. We need to provide some form of rewards, some form of incentives, so that they can feel valued, they can feel appreciated, and they can feel motivated to continue with the security effort, which is very important. Many a times, we are very keen to observe and look out for mistakes when stakeholders do something wrong, right? But let's also be cognizant of their performance and their good performance. Let's appreciate them. Let's show them that we value them. All right. So this is a very important strategy as well. All right. So in deliberating on your stakeholder engagement process, this strategy needs to be incorporated in that process. All right. The last strategy, last but not least, our 10th strategy in this discussion is continuous review and monitoring of ongoing stakeholder engagements. Okay. Now, the stakeholder engagement process is not a one-off process. It's got to be ongoing. Okay. We should have that engagement process ongoing. And remember, because we're dealing with different stakeholders, both internal and external, they change with time. Okay. We might change them with time. I mean, things change. Your vendors and suppliers can change. Your employees change. Your business line managers or function heads change. I mean, different things change, okay? And as they change, so should our stakeholder engagement plan. It should reflect these changes, okay? So the way that we were communicating 5 years ago with stakeholder one is not the way that we are probably going to be engaging and communicating and collaborating with that type of stakeholder 5 years down the line. Okay? We can change things. We can change our communication channels and methods. We can change our feedback mechanism channels. Okay? We can change a thing or two, all right? So it is very important for those changes to reflect in the stakeholder engagement plan as we move forward, right? That's it for this video. I hope that you found it enlightening and you've soaked in on a few insights to help you build and improve on your collaborations and engagements with the internal and external stakeholders. And until our next video episode, thank you for watching and goodbye for now.